Hello everyone, this is part 54 of What If Naruto was in Anbu at 6, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. He cupped the cool water in his hand, bringing it up and splashing it onto his face as best he could, then bringing it over and onto his back. Winter was here, but soon as midday sun could still be brutal on anyone traveling the dunes. He dipped his hand down again, bringing it to his lips this time and drinking gratefully. Water that didn't taste like the plastic of their canteens was a craving he'd had for the last few hours. He scratched at his forehead. He knew that it didn't really itch. It was just in his head. The seal there was as smooth as his own skin, the ink having dried weeks ago. It didn't stop him from rubbing it every now and again. Kiba stood as he heard the last of the enemy scouting band have their tea behind him. The Inuzuka turned, watching as Yuriki kicked the drying man to the floor, his bee washing over the sands, another useless bunch, his subordinate said, wiping his blade before throwing the cloth on the floor. Kiba looked down on the bee leaf ninja as he thought, taking note of Shuzen coming back from disposing of the last one they'd K. You couldn't let your guard down with these men, not with any of them. Even after weeks of fighting together across the dunes, he had little doubt they'd each K him if they had half a chance. 3 had tried during the first few days. Those had been the first and last attempts. 2 others had tried to escape. They had, perhaps, gotten an hour head start before he discovered their absence. He used the seal to subsequently to locate them, and K them. He made sure the others found the bee. This is getting bad, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Yea, it is. Karai, the only woman left in his squad, spoke up to his right, sitting on a stone, her booted feet next to the water. Just 2 weeks ago we'd be lucky if we saw 2 scouting bands every couple of days. Now they're coming out of the woodwork like roaches. We can't even get a full night's sleep before we have to set up an ambush again. We would be able to sleep and rest if our fearless leader didn't insist that we camp in the only oasis for 20 miles. We're seeing so many of them because they're practically flocking here. Shuzen put in, damn near growling at him. Kiba glared right back. Our orders are to deny the enemy the water they need to move forward, to report back if we discover heavy troop movement, and to scout this area. Shuzen snorted, sitting down. Right, because we're all still good little soldiers. He does have a point though. Yuriki chimed in his 2 cents. We may be fine now, but soon enough we're gonna get sloppy with no sleep. And I'm too handsome to rest just yet. We may want to move camp. That, and I'm pretty sure that these missing guys are gonna get noticed sooner or later. If not by them, well, missing, then smell will lead the bigger, stronger ninja here soon enough. Karai added. We're not moving, period. The Devil King himself is gonna have to haul his sorry C over here before we leave. Hey, don't jinx us with bad luck by mentioning that guy. Let's just wait till Guro gets back with the others from the patrol and we can discuss. The discussion, Kiba snarled, flexing the clawed fingers of his prosthetic arm, is over. Guro was the only ninja here that was anywhere near his strength level. And Kiba made sure that the first thing he did was see to it that he was gone as much as possible. Normally he sent him off alone, hoping somewhere in his mind that the criminal would get K off by some leaf junin. But he always came back. He was covered in grit or B, but he always came back. Today was an exception, however. These attacks were growing too frequent to be anything other than an advance into Suna. The others disagreed, what with the winter's freezing cold nights already on them, but Kiba could feel it. Something big was going down, and the Devil King wouldn't give 3 good s if it got colder than the frozen wastes to the far north. The others became quiet and contrite, and Kiba was all the more glad for it. These people were not exactly ones he wanted to get overly close with. It was an hour or so later when Guro finally arrived, Zhang, Suka and Kazuki with him. Kiba was going to open his mouth when the man see him off, and Kiba could see real, genuine fear on his face. Come here, you need to see this. Guro was a stout man, broad-shouldered, his face was stern with a jaw like an anvil, with a thin, surprisingly well-groomed mustache on his upper lip. The top of his head was clean shaven with the rest tied into a well cared for knot at the back of his skull. Kiba narrowed his eyes, listening as the others questioned, and Guro just told them to come along before he turned and began running. The Inuzuka followed, warily, ready to use the seal if he had to. The Inuzuka soon found himself making his way over the edge of a dune, sand going down his shirt and his pants as he crawled on his stomach to reach the top without being seen. Guro and the others doing the same. As soon as he was able to see past the sheet of sand, Kiba's mouth fell wide open, his lungs hitching in his sea as though his air didn't know whether to go in or out of his sea. Holy yes. Guro's nod went unseen beside him. I know. There's thousands of them, he exclaimed to the other man. And not a single one is a cell sword, unlike that disaster on the Jianling, every single one of those men is a ninja. Trained and ready to fight. Kiba felt himself shaking his head. Suna will never survive this. After a minute or so, Kiba found his voice again. We need to report back to the Kazekage. Agreed. Though it would be better to get a more precise count first. Kiba looked to the man, meeting his eyes and thinking for a moment, all right, we'll stick around for a while. See if we can narrow it down a bit more, but no wonder anything stupid. They find one of us this close, their people are gonna go crazy and you're gonna put us all at risk. They all nodded, then, they each began quietly moving across the ocean of sand, their eyes following the massive army below. When the sun began to fall, and the winds began to carry more cold than sand, he ordered the camp to be set up. He stood on the crest of a dune, watching, his blue eyes traveling this way and that way. He looked down to the men pitching up the tents or getting ready to set up a patrol around the established perimeter. It wasn't very long before he saw Yoshihiro waddling up the dune to speak to him, his weight making it more difficult than it perhaps should have been. When he was finally within speaking distance, the Tsuchikage spoke up. You know, every damn scout within a mile from this place must have reported back that we're coming. No, he answered with a shake of his head. I have taken steps. Yoshihiro shrugged as he finally reached the top to stand beside him. They'll know soon enough, won't they? It'll be hard to miss when we're breaking down the gate and climbing their walls. He didn't really have much of an answer to that, so he kept quiet. Finally the Tsuchikage spoke up again. I notice you didn't bring Miss Sabaku along. No, I didn't. He was somewhat ashamed to notice the vaguest hint of defensiveness in his voice. Yoshihiro stared at him for a good while before he decided to talk again. So, I guess that means negotiation is out of the consideration list, eh? You knew it would be, he said, knowing that it was true. Man can still hope, can't he? Naruto shrugged. Hope all you like. It will not change anything. Yoshihiro's lips tightened before he reached into his clothing and pulled out some papers, holding them in his hand, the reports of the enemy ambush teams we've been able to K that are guarding the oases. 38K by my count, we lost perhaps at least twice that. Naruto nodded, not even bothering to take the papers. It is fine. Go see to your other duties, and to your men. With the blatant dismissal, Yoshihiro stuffed the papers in his clothing pocket again before he turned and began walking away. Just before the Tsuchikage was out of earshot, the Godime shouted down to him. Yoshihiro. He waited for him to turn before finishing. Inform the Sound 4 to come here along with Jiraiya. When Kiba had rejoined his team, he spoke to each one at a time. What did you learn? He asked Shuzen first. The Leafs have a sizable force of Kiri ninja, other villages are there too, but Kiri is the biggest chunk, I think. Yuriki shook his head beside them. No, you got it all wrong. Rock guys are the biggest besides Leafs. They have to be taking up at least 1/4 of that damn camp. Doesn't matter, Kiba quickly interrupted. Whichever one's biggest, we know that Kiri and Iwa are their best supporting troops now. Anyone else have anything to add? Judging by the amount of tents they're pitching down there alone, Karai began. I'd have to say that there's got to be at least 3.5, maybe even 4,000 ninja here. Kiba felt the breath get knocked out of him. He'd expected a vanguard force to secure a beachhead in the winter first. Never something like this. Never this soon. 4,000. Suna didn't even have 1/4 of that number. Before he could get too much farther into his deliberation, Guro spoke up, his voice as scratchy and gritty as gravel. The Devil King, he said, making everyone's heart shudder with a jolt of fear. He's here, eastern end of the camp. His heart hammered beneath his sea. Was it all fear, or could he detect the faintest hint of anticipation in his thoughts? You're sure? The others began murmuring amongst themselves, as quiet as they dared. Guro nodded once, meeting Kiba's eyes unflinchingly. Yes, he's here. Kiba licked his dry lips. He wanted to fight, to see that bastard with his own eyes. But he restrained himself, if only just. There was more at stake here now than just him. Suna would burn if word did not reach them of this attack force. Maybe other teams got away and already sent word. But he wasn't about to trust any other teams with this. They may be or they may not have seen this yet, and he would get there before them. Every minute counted here. He nodded to himself. All right, we have what we need. Let's head back to Suna, tell them what's coming. He moved to stand when Guro caught his wrist. Wait, he said. Kiba looked at the older man, his serious eyes, the firm set of his jaw. He knew that look. Don't you see what this is? At his silence, the veteran ninja continued. We can end this here. When Zhang, the shortest member of the group, spoke up with, wait. Us fight the Devil King. Are you nuts? It basically summed up the rest of the group's general thoughts. Guro shook his head, though he kept looking straight at Kiba. Face it, boy. We were broken out of prison to do Black Ops raid missions against enemy scouts. Even if we survive this, Suna may be destroyed, and even if it isn't, it's highly unlikely that the Kazekage will pardon us since he doesn't even know we're out here. 8 men can't make much of a difference against 4,000, especially not in a protracted siege. But right here, right now, we see off the head of the snake in the body. I may not have been a paragon of virtue in my life, but I do still love my home. And against this, against him, I think I'm willing to if there's even the smallest chance that we might win. Even if half his army turned on him right now, and we all managed to fight him, we won't win. Someone said. Kiba didn't even bother to identify who. He can't be K. I'd like to test that for myself. Guro answered. He burned Kumo to the ground. If he makes it to Suna, he will do no less. The Kazekage will everyone we've ever known will we The others were about to continue arguing when Kiba stood, pulling himself free of the older man's grip. If he were honest with himself, he could admit that he truly had been looking for an excuse. Well, that makes things simple then. He finally said, and saw Guro smile. None of them took any real note of the small snake that's nearby. I have a task for the 5 of you. He confessed, looking at them. Something you must do in the battle. Shouldn't we discuss this in the War Council meeting then? Jiraiya asked, curious. The fewer know of this the better. Naruto explained, shaking his head. What I'm going to ask you to do is arguably the most important aspect of this attack. All rights are out with it already. Naruto glared at Tayuya. Please, she decided to ask after a moment or two, sufficiently unnerved after his extended glaring. Seemingly satisfied, he extended his hand to the ground at their feet. With a muttered word, Wind Chakra carved a precise sketch of Sunagaku in the sand. You will be deployed here. He knelt, and pressed his finger at a spot that was very near the center of the village. Once I've personally breached the village's eastern gate, you 3 will move here and begin. Kiri will attack the northern gate, so you should find little resistance if you're careful. I expect you to be there by the time our Iwa forces circle to the south. Once you've arrived there, you 4 will guard Jiraiya while he works. On what? The Toad-Sanin asked, skeptical. A seal, Naruto answered simply. One I designed myself. You must learn it, and be able to duplicate it in 7 days' time. That is when we will attack. Jiraiya nodded. Okay, and what does? They stopped, all but Naruto going tense for half a heartbeat before Jiraiya continued. That the seal do. I need specifics if I'm going to make it quickly. As he spoke, Naruto whispered to the others. Leave. They are after me and will not attack with you present. Tell no one in the camp. They can't be alerted. In a normal volume, he continued. I will inform you of the specifics at the War Council. Return to your duties for now. They all turned, acting as normal as they ever would, giving little to no hint of their awareness. Naruto remained at the dune, smiling to himself. Did you hear enough, little dog? When wooden puppets surged from the sand around, he had his answer. Yes, I think you did. Wasting no more time, he turned, too fast for the eyes of the men he was fighting against. 3 of the 6 puppets were sewn into hundreds of pieces with a wide backhand movement. The Devil King continued with his momentum, Spinning in place, he ducked fluidly beneath the blades of the other puppets, rising with an upkick that shattered the main chassis of a fourth puppet. Finally, as the other two puppets that had passed him turned for a second pass, he swiveled around to face them, releasing twin streams of searingly hot flames that reduced them to so much ash and half-melted pieces of metal. Naruto craned his turning his head sideways to avoid the shuriken that would otherwise have carved straight through the back of his skull. Turning on his heel, his foot shot out, and with a gut-churning crunch, one ninja's head was twisted until his was snapped off his spine. When he fell, his head landed, awkwardly. He blinked, the genjutsu dispelled just in time for him to hear the last part of his assailant's words, Astad. He raised his hand, blocking the savage swing that would have driven the ninja's kunai into his ear before he elbowed him in the sea and turned with a backhand that may have shattered his jaw. The man fell to the sands choking on B. Taking a back step, the Hokage deftly avoided a Kanoiki's downward sword swing, 3 more were closing in behind him. He caught her follow-up swing with his palm, the edge of her sword barely see into his skin before he snapped the thing in half. He grabbed the young woman by the face with his other hand. Futen Shoha, the concussive force sent her skidding across the dunes over what must have been 100 feet of sand. She was most likely her brain hemorrhaging with the forces. If she wasn't, then he was fairly certain she was not going to get back into the fight anytime soon. Turning around, he drove the broken sword still held in his hand up through the bottom of his next opponent's mouth and straight through the skull, the tip of the sword just peeking up from the very top of the man's hair. Pushing him away, Naruto turned and drove his fist head-on into the stone projectile of his enemy, shattering the rock and using the dust to obscure his disappearance. Guro felt the world go dark as something struck the back of his head, hard. He fell to the sand with a dull thud, and when Naruto turned, it was only to catch Kiba's claw-tipped prosthetic arm with one hand and grip his tea with another, see off whatever was about to leave his mouth. Ah, he remarked, smiling thinly. Inuzuka, I should have guessed by the smell. How is your sister faring these days? He tightened his grip on Kiba's tea when the dog tried to lash out at him. The leaf turned soon. A ninja fumbled in his holster, reaching for a blade. That's not going to work, Naruto remarked as he finally found one. He began to raise it, only for the weapon to become so hot it burned his forcing him to drop it. Despite his lack of air, Kiba managed to force out the words. Just, damn you. Before that can happen, wouldn't you have to, I don't know, actually hurt me? How's this? The prosthetic hand Naruto was holding suddenly lost all strength, going slack as he saw Kiba pull his arm free of the hand as though pulling out of a glove, revealing another, gleaming blade, hidden within the clawed hand itself, attached to the prosthetic's wrist. Kiba drove it forward, aiming for Naruto's C. And with the same, limp claw-tipped hand still in his grip, Naruto caught the knife between 2 of its fingers, stopping the weapon inches from his and snapping it like he'd done the sword earlier. He was not so effective at stopping the one that was driven straight through the back of his knee, however. Naruto roared, pushing Kiba so hard the Inuzuka found himself flying as Naruto turned to face whoever had hit him. It was Guro, his eyes glazed with a concussion. Run, he shouted. Run and tell them. You can't win now. That was all Naruto let him get out before he punched down on the top of the man's head, very likely K him if the crunch of bone was any clue. The Hokage turned to face Kiba again, only to be forced to dodge a hail of shuriken being thrown from the last 2 ninja in Kiba's little band, the puppeteers, offering cover as Kiba ran to his escape. Naruto heard a groan behind him, he spared a glance, finding the ninja whose jaw he shattered getting back to his feet. Then the man got an arrow through the end for his trouble, courtesy of Kimimaro as the sound 4 rushed up the dune again with others, drawn by the commotion. He saw Hanabi there, Jiraiya, Kakashi, Yoshihiro. Run, little dog. Turning back to face his escaping enemy, Naruto caught a kunai between his fingers and tossed it aside as the 3 ran for their lives. Let's not make it too easy. Kiba panted, listening to Zhang and Yuriki running next to him. He could barely hear Yuriki's repeated mutters of, holy S, holy S, holy S, over the crunching of sand beneath his boots and the rapid staccato of his own heart. They were outright sprinting across the dunes. Kiba wasn't sure how fast the Devil King could be with his leg like that, but he wasn't going to take any chances. Finally, after crossing what must have been 100 yards, the last 3 Suna ninja stopped for a breath. Holy s. Yuriki repeated again. Did we just escape the Devil King? He asked, looking back and finding no one. Kiba was about to nod when suddenly, erupting from the earth like some worm from ancient legends, a massive snake shot out and into Zhang. The Suna Nin barely had time to scream before he was buried beneath the sand. Run! Kiba yelled and both took off again, their panicked eyes scanning the dark sands for movement. The snakes emerged with such force, with such unbelievable stealth. Kiba felt himself beginning to fall into the realm that spelled death for any ninja. Panic. They came out of shadows where none existed, the sands became an ocean that hid 100 million of them. With every step they were nipping at his heels, fangs dripping with venom, half again as large as any building in Suna, they would swallow him whole. He didn't even see when Yuriki was caught. He just heard the scream. A sound that was so quickly silenced he wondered if he'd heard it at all. He kept on running. When the sound for Jiraiya, Hanabi and several other Konoha ninja finally crested the dune and joined him, Naruto had already pulled out the kunai from the back of his knee, and was standing tall, staring at the foolish dog as he ran back to his masters with his tail between his legs. Kidomaru already had an arrow notched into his bow. I got him, he said, already transforming so his sight could extend across the expanse of night. He watched unblinking, adjusting his aim. It was an insane shot, but Naruto had little doubt he'd be able to hit him, even from here. The Hokage's eyes flashed for the briefest of instants. Kidomaru released his arrow. The force that struck Kiba's prosthetic shoulder sent him tumbling forward. It was only muscle memory and instinct that allowed him to roll with the powerful blow, regain his legs and keep on sprinting. Son of A.B. The spider ninja roared, ready to notch another arrow before Naruto raised his hand. Enough, the fool will soon. The arachnid ninja looked displeased, his curse seal form only adding to the severity of his expression. I don't miss, he growled, his breath fogging in the freezing night air. This time you did, Naruto said simply before looking to the others. The camp was beginning to stir, restless from the commotion. Go calm the men down, then I want all of you to gather everyone of import to meet. It's time for a war council. The sound for Hanabi and the others bowed. As they turned to leave, Naruto gave Jiraiya a look which told him to stay. Now that that's over with, the Sannin drawled once the others were out of earshot. Where's that seal you mentioned? I need to get to a fire before I freeze to death out here. Naruto reached into his coat, pulling a scroll free and handed it to him. The Sannin's eyes scanned over the thing as he unrolled it, raising an eyebrow. A chakra channeling scroll. In essence, Naruto conceded, though it is a bit more complicated than that. You will first use this seal. Once you have fulfilled your part, then I will do the rest. Jiraiya looked down at it and shrugged. Okay, so what exactly is my part? She was shivering so bad Kisame may have thought the woman was going through some kind of seizure if he didn't know any better. How the hell are you cold? He asked, throwing another stick in the fire. You're a damn container for the QB. Its chakra's hot as hell. She shivered more as she glared at him. How the hell are you not? She stuttered out, trying to wrap the cloak tighter around herself, her feet all but placed over the flames of the fire pit. The monster of Kiri shrugged. I can take cold just fine. Heat is what'll annoy the hell outta me. Akina groaned, falling onto her side and all but curling her body around the heat of the fire. How the hell can Naruto do this to his own men? This cold is brutal. Kisame smiled. And we're only carrying equipment for 2 people, and hunting for our food. Those guys in his army have to carry a surplus of food, equipment, weaponry. Anything and everything, even the kitchen sink. Things get damaged and lost in armies. So they need lots of spares. The most surplus we're carrying are your damn blankets. Akina opened her eyes looking at him from across the fire. Stop the dramatics already, make your point. Kisame barked out a quick laugh as he shook his head. I'm saying that just this march alone, let alone the fighting ahead, is going to exhaust his men. I wouldn't be surprised if half of them are practically keeling over before the first jutsu are exchanged. You're saying that Suna has a chance then? She was sure now, that Kisame's constant, ever-present, annoying, I know something you don't, smiles, were the most absolutely infuriating thing about the man. A small one, he said, damn near non-existent, but it's there, they could win, if that Kazekage of yours really tries, and the Demon King really doesn't. Akina sighed, tucking her head down to her sea, scooting just an inch or two closer to the fire. And you're enjoying every second of this, aren't you? She asked, her voice a mix of sadness and distaste. Kisum shrugged. I am what I am. They remained quiet for a few more moments before Kisum spoke up again. I don't want to K you, girl. She raised her head to look at him. I kinda figured that, seeing as how we've been traveling together for a month or two now. Don't act stupid, he said. No smile adorned his face this time. You know what I'm talking about. She sat up, ignoring the cold with the severity their conversation had taken on. To Kisum's surprise, the young woman didn't become angry, her face only grew more somber as she looked at him. I don't want to lose any more friends, Kisum. I'm going there to fight. He shot back, more serious than she'd ever heard him before. I ain't fighting for Sand's dirt, and I'm not fighting for Leaf's peace. I'm going there to fight, and if they can K me. If your friends get in my way, it makes little difference, I will K them. You can try to fight me now, you might just win, then again, you might not. As important as those friends of yours in Suna might be to you, I know that stopping your brother is higher on your list of priorities. And if we fight and I do K you, I sure as hell won't go out of my way to try to stop him the way you plan to. Akina stared into the fire for a moment, bowing her head, her hair shadowed her eyes, though he could faintly see the glimmer of tears trailing down her cheeks. You're a real bastard, you know that. When she shivered, Kisum wasn't completely sure it was from the cold this time. He shrugged. I am what I am. Good, good. Baki found himself repeating as he watched Gaara hold his meditative stance. Good. Keep your focus, remember, it's not about force, it's all about control. You're channeling the attack, you're not just hurling it free. Gaara kept his eyes closed, listening to Baki's words as he concentrated on his task. The technique did work, that was the good news. The bad news was that he wasn't sure if it would truly work in the heat of combat. In this serene environment, with sand beneath his feet, the shade of the mountain over his head, the Kazekage was more than capable of keeping the level of focus necessary to maintain this. When the fight was joined though, and he was left with his adrenaline high, and he heard the screaming and the shouting, when Uzumaki's fire attacks were all but melting his skin off, could he keep his focus then? He wasn't sure. And to rely on a, maybe, when fighting the Devil King was nigh tantamount to as. The worst news was that he couldn't really test it out. This wasn't a skill he would ever even dream of using on an ally. It was a K technique, plain and simple. He could test its defensive properties, and how it would hold up against other types of attacks, but Baki's jutsu were nowhere near on the level of Konoha's Hokage. It would be like comparing his sand coffin technique to his fully transformed Shukaku state. Alnal, this thing worked on theory, and Gaara's first real test run of it was going to be when he fought Naruto again. He began to move, striking with the practiced ease of his taijutsu style. It wasn't impressive by any real stretch imagination, he was no taijutsu master, but it gave him practice at keeping the flow of his chakra even and precise while moving. He picked up his speed with every strike, trying to move as fast as he would be moving in a real fight. All the while Baki stood by, nodding as he tried to detect some flaw, some hiccup that wouldn't make this thing work. Dodge! He shouted, launching a small fireball attack at the Kazekage's feet. Gaara, and felt the technique fluctuate for the briefest of instants with the sudden movement, but soon enough he was able to regain my focus. Nevertheless Baki felt it, and the redhead could tell his sensei was frowning by the tone of his voice as he shouted. Again, barely giving Gaara enough time to land before he had to jump again. They both stopped, sensing Shikamaru's approach before they ever saw him. Gaara's mind was wandering to every worst-case scenario he'd ever thought of. And he'd managed to think of quite an impressive number these last few weeks. When the shadow user finally did reach their training grounds, Gaara wasted no time. What happened? Shikamaru's face was grim. Follow me. They walked in one by one less than 2 hours later. He could see their faces as they each took a seat. Normally they met in his office, or even, informally out of it. He never called them into the tower's war room before. He'd never had a reason to use it really. They were all thinking something different, some were still hopeful, that this room, and the implications it brought, didn't necessarily go hand in hand, that it wouldn't come as a full package. Others were curious, wondering just how grave things could have gotten and how quickly, for him to just call a meeting like this. But either way, he could see that everyone who walked into this room had one thing in common. They were afraid. It wasn't an obvious thing really. But it was there, that little, black snake at the back of their minds. They were all afraid. They could all just see the storm gathering at the very edge of the horizon. It wasn't a question anymore of, will it reach us, but rather a question of when. These people probably thought they still had at least another month, maybe even 3, when spring would be here. And Gaara hated to say that he'd thought so too. He expected retribution, but not this quickly. Not in the S of winter, and nothing this massive. The last of them arrived, took their seats, and he spoke. We have 7 days, at best. Then we're going to have an army of 4,000 shinobi tearing down our walls. Their reactions were as varied as their expressions had been. Some shouted, others demanded answers, others remained stoic, others more were simply shocked into silence, some murmured and others spoke with an aide, or a neighbor. My lord, old Fuzu stood, his beard white and reaching down to his shirt. His position at the ripe old age of 94 was advisory at best, applaud at worst, held there only because of so many long years of good service that it'd be in bad taste, almost a disgrace to remove him at this stage. This is unexpected, it was not meant to be this soon. But it is this soon, he interrupted a bit more harshly than he intended. Fuzu, he continued, gentler, and there's nothing that can change that now. More murmuring, voices that were quickly escalating in volume. Enough, he shouted after a moment or two, silencing the room now full of grim faces more than anything else. We all knew this was coming. There are plans in place. Those of you who have your orders go and see that they get done. Quickly, there is too little time as it is. Ninja commanders, remain here. More than half of the people filed out, some going off to secure the village's holdings, its supplies, to make certain everything was ready when the enemy hit and the civilians were taken to the caves that honeycombed the mountains to the west of the village. It would be Suna's last, possible escape route. Its tight spaces and labyrinthine passageways formed bizarre dizzying network that no one could traverse without being lost for hours. Should the worst come to pass, the last of the village's ninja would hold off the enemy there with traps and ambushes, giving the genin, that had been trained thoroughly and repeatedly in the use of the passages, time enough to escort the civilians through. They would emerge miles westward far away from the village, their enemies, and damn near everything else. It wouldn't give them a guaranteed chance of survival. But it would be a chance nonetheless. The lives saved, not the enemy's would determine if they won or lost in his mind. Finally, when all the ones who initially stood, filed out, he was left with his commanders. He focused on the defenses of the eastern wall first. That's where the enemy was coming from and it was most likely where the brunt of the enemy force would hit. The heaviest fighting is going to take place there. Shikamaru spoke up from where he sat. Kiba said that he overheard Konoha's cage say he would break through the eastern wall, personally. Kiba. It was Ino who spoke up this time. I thought he was on leave for, you know. He was. Gaara bit out, glaring at Shikamaru. He'd had words with the shadow user after he'd learned just why Kiba was out there. He was scheduled for the removal of the cage bird seal tomorrow morning. Knowing well enough to drop a subject when a tone like that was brought up, Ino deftly continued. Well, either way, I don't recommend putting our heaviest hitters there. The Hokage is too strong, you don't want to waste your elites trying to bring him down and leave everything else defenseless. It wouldn't matter. Daisuke, one of Gaara's Anbu captains, one who'd personally supervised Akina while she'd been here, if he recalled. If that number is accurate, then Konoha, at the very least, outnumbers us 4-1. We are ninja, not infantry spearmen. When our chakra begins to run dry, we will S. And with each one of us needing to fight for, we will S quickly. Most of those men he has will be little more than Chunin. Another captain argued back. Does it matter? How many shinobi ranked or higher do we have? 2, perhaps, 300, if all goes well and those we call back from the field return in time, if they return at all. How many does Konoha have marching down on us? 800. 1,000. We cannot match them blow for blow. Daisuke turned his masked eyes to Gaara. I say we hit the Devil King with everything we've got. Every single shinobi B rank or higher at the eastern gate ready to throw a jutsu at him. It's the only chance we have. To see off the head of the snake doesn't mean the body is gonna s. Tsunade, the head medical ninja of Suna, replied, her cheek resting on her fist. She seemed either bored or amused by Daisuke's words. Say you him, half of Suna's manpower s, what makes you think Konoha is just going to retreat? Everyone knows that all Konoha is will fall to pieces the moment the Devil King stops breathing. He is literally the mortar between the stones. Without him Iwa goes back to being mountain dwellers, Kiri goes on fighting for the scrap on their islands, and Konoha will probably be attacked by anyone and everyone with half a grood or a mind for spoils. This war don't last a day, after he is K. You can't K this one though, can you? The slug princess smiled. I'll at least try. Tsunade looked like she was about to say something else before Shikamaru decided to interrupt. Trying to spread our forces out evenly, he began, standing up and pulling a piece of paper from the side of his chair. Or trying to beat Konoha's Devil King outright will have us s in an hour and our people half s by the morning. If we're lucky. He walked over to Gaara, reaching out and placing the folded sheet of paper on his desk. I trust we all remember Zhuge Liang. Gaara's eyes narrowed and his fist tightened on the cloth at his knee, hidden to all others by the desk as he leaned forward, nodding slowly. I'm taking a page from his book here. The Nara continued. We can't match them for numbers, even with our walls and fallback points, and we sure as hell can't just off the head of the snake as Lady Tsunade put it, so, traps. We trap everything. Every back alley, every rooftop, every shingle. I am not blowing up my village. Gaara s. We're not blowing it up, I just mean everything we can possibly bring, kunai traps, explosive note traps, razor wire, hell drop a caltrop under their shoes for all I care, just throw everything and anything you can to slow down the fodder. See, he turned around now addressing the whole room. The problem with your recommendation is, he pointed to Ino. We're eventually just gonna be overwhelmed, even if we K2 people for every one of theirs we still don't have enough manpower to fight a war of attrition, and conversely, throwing your entire army at a guy that's known to level enemy forces single-handedly, is more a tactic of desperation. It fits, really, but I rather not condone active s. The shadow user saw that he had their attention, so he continued. With my plan, everything below Junin will either be K, or at the very least slowed down. Meaning that their elites fight our elites while our guys are still fresh, and when we need to fall back, since we will know our way around the traps, we'll be able to get around them while the enemy has to pass through the gauntlet. This gives our men a chance to rest, disorganizes enemy ranks, and overall works better in our favor, especially if we put the heaviest traps along the north and south. Why there? Chuji asked. I don't think traps are gonna do much against the Devil King. Putting traps along the east is just going to be like spitting at a house and hoping to bring it down. He extended his shadow, contorting and conforming it until it resembled the general layout of the village. He threw 6 kunai, on both the northern and southern districts, are traps. They'll slow down north and south, the eastern front, here a shadowy blob, in the shape of the leaf insignia made its way slowly forward. Overextends itself. Here, more blobs appeared, taking the shape of the Suna insignia, 2 to the north, 2 to the south and 1 large one in the center. Each of these moved forward, with the north and southern ones abandoning their positions along the traps and advancing on the leaf. We surround them on 3 sides. Right there we concentrate our forces as much as possible until the northern and southern enemies, here Kiri and Iwa symbols appeared on their respective sides, break through the traps, then we fall back to the main courtyard bazaar, also heavily trapped. And after the enemy suffers heavy losses we can engage in a war of attrition. Sakura piped up, nodding to herself. And to go with the traps, the puppet users will be at a huge advantage. We could design entire traps that would go off when they say so, rather than just using tripwire or something else as fallible. They can make them go off when they want rather than when an enemy triggers them, making them twice as s. You're essentially combining both types of strategies. First stage we attack, second stage we purely defend. Shikamaru nodded. An arrow without a bow is useless, as is the bow without the arrow. Combine them both, however, he trailed off. Gaara looked to the rest of the assembled Anbu and Junin. Does anyone have any disagreements? At the ensuing silence he spoke again. If this is to be carried out, then the civilians will have to be evacuated. Today. Shikamaru interrupted. It'll take teams at least 2 days working round the clock to get these traps up and cataloging them. We have no more time to waste on holding the hands of the non-combatants. Gaara nodded and was about to continue when a voice spoke up from the upper rafters. Nara-san, Kazekage-sama. He looked up, bringing his eyes to Yue Ying. She looked at him in the eye as she spoke, as serious as he'd ever seen her. I request that you leave the northern front to me. You do not have command of my men. He dismissed her, ready to keep discussing things with Shikamaru when she spoke up again, a little louder to see him off. I did not say to leave the defense to me and some men. I said, leave it to me. He paused, raising an eyebrow. He saw others do the same as they craned their heads to look up at her. To you. Alone. Yes, she answered, as though it was the simplest thing in the world. You will have the time that you need. One ninja can't just hold off an army by themselves. Someone said. I will succeed. You will have the time you need. Shikamaru snorted. You want us to entrust the entire northern side to one Kunoichi? She shrugged. Can you afford not to? I will need only the assistance of 2 to 3 puppeteers, as many as can give me control of 10 puppets. After that they can leave to other fronts and fight there. Kiri is attacking from the north, Iwa from the south and the bulk of Konoha from the east. Who does Kiri have of note, since the death of Guan, his apprentice, and Ginchio Takibana? No one. Lesser names to those who came before, barely worthy of being listed as a ranking ninja. Iwa however still has the devil Shimazu to say the least. Konoha itself has legends like the Mistress of Genjutsu, the Green Beast, Copy Ninja, the Devil King. You'll be hard-pressed to face any one of these people, let alone all of them. Withdraw your troops from the northern sector, devote more of your traps to the south, the bazaar's fallback point, and the center line. Those who you wish to attack the Konoha ninja from the north can be divided. One group will circle around from the north, another will continue fighting on the southern line, stalling Iwa's forces exponentially more if they work in conjunction with the traps. What guarantee do we have that you can accomplish what you say? Gaara asked. There are no guarantees in war. She answered. But I promise that I will, at the very least, see Kiri's forces in half. It was a bold claim, and he didn't really believe it. Still, the truth was she was right. They didn't have the manpower. Even with Shikamaru's plan they would be stretched thin. Before I agree to any of this, you're going to tell me, exactly, what it is you're planning. She nodded. In private. Gaara then stood and walked over to Shikamaru, looking down at the shadow map. There's only one thing about this I don't like. Shika shrugged when he stayed quiet. I can use shadows, not read minds. He tapped his foot at the village center, where the leaf insignia still was. This. Kiba said he overheard Jiraiya planning to use some kind of seal in the village center. If we let them in, then they're going to charge right for the goal. That is the bait to make them overextend themselves. How do we stop them after they've taken the bait? Shikamaru took a deep breath, then let it out as a sigh. Well, here, we're just gonna have to rely on a bit of good luck to be on our side, to be honest. We haven't had a lot of good luck recently. The Nara shrugged, then pray that they have some very bad luck instead. She hated this room. She hated everything in it. The bed, the desk, the chakra-absorbing walls. It wasn't a room, it was a damn cell. Most of all she hated that door. She remembered when he said she would be staying here when he left. She struggled and cursed, doing everything she could to avoid it, save for attacking him physically. She didn't do that. In the end, he put her to sleep, some genjutsu or other. He'd carried her here, and when she woke up she was locked in some room that had its own bathroom and bedroom, her chakra levels barely above that of a genin. She was brought food every morning. Though she was always asleep for it, with her chakra levels as they were, she was susceptible to the Anbu's genjutsu. When she first woke up, she'd beaten her hands against that damn door, cursing him, Konoha, all of his soldiers and damn near everything else. She'd called him a coward, a thirsty monster even. She'd shouted that day until she damn near felt her be. She'd cried too. She still couldn't say what brought that on. Frustration. Hurt maybe. All she knew was that she'd shouted and cried until she finally fell asleep naturally. I cannot have you with me, he said. But it wasn't what he said, it's what he didn't say. You can convince me to stop. You can convince your brother to stop. You can make it so that this never happens. All these things she heard as she remembered. Recalling it now, she thinks she can see just how sad he was, maybe. Or maybe it's just her imagination trying to soften the blow. No matter what though, that door remained firmly shut, and there was nothing she could do. So she slept as much as she could, hoping the days would go by quicker. She wasn't sure how long she'd been in here. She would read every now and again, the dozen or so books he'd left here. Two were her favorites, the others were ones she'd bookmarked to read through. She had to wonder when he'd noticed. Or was it a servant who'd placed these here for her? Taking note of the prisoner's preferences as she cleaned. She moved to reach one of the books now when a resounding click rang through her room. Temari never would have believed the sound of an opening lock could ever be quite so beautiful, or that it would make her heart stop, but it was, and it did. The door opened, and a man tossed something. It landed at her feet. It was night outside, and the cold wind felt blissful as it came her cheek. "Come on," he said, hissing out a whisper. "We don't have much time." She reached down, grasping shuriken, kunai holsters, and a change of clothes. She looked back up at the man. "Who?" she began before looking more closely at his face. "Wait, I know yo. We don't have the time." Her rescuer hissed. "I promise I'll explain everything on the way, but we must get to Suna now. You're the only one that might be able to stop this." That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.